about to press live on YouTube. We are going live. Now you should be able to see me here. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that we should be live now by this point. Welcome to another episode of How to Rock Astrology. My name is Dustin Cormier, and today we are being visited by my good friend, Kat Rose. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, Kat.
Thank you, Dustin.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that we should about that. That would be my phone. Okay, technology is fun. So I'm sorry about that, Kat. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm recovering from a bit of a cough, but
right.
we'll make it through, hopefully without me. Just yeah.
Well, please feel free. You know, I really appreciate that you're toughing it out with me and you're hanging out with me today. Please feel free to let me know if you're not feeling good. You know, even if we get like a nice little interview out of this, you're always welcome to come back and we'll hang out and talk a little bit more.
Thank you. No, this is making me feel better. I do like going on YouTube and
good
recovery.
Yeah, good. Yeah, some sort of a nice way to make something out of it.
Exactly.
So, Kat, I invited you to hang out with me on my channel today. This is How to Rock Astrology's Astro Interviews series. And for everybody watching, my audience is already warmed up a little bit to what this is all about. I've been inviting astrologers from all over YouTube and from wherever I can find my fellow astrologers to really, these sessions are usually focused, we branch into all a million places, but usually what I tend to be focused on is describing your individual style of astrology and talking about how to launch off into becoming a professional astrologer who's either on YouTube and doing transits and, you know, these sort of more collective things versus actually getting clients and being an astrological therapist and counselor. How do you jump out there? What does it feel like? And what can we do to prepare ourselves in the best way that we can to be ready for that as a career? So, Kat, you have been doing astrology for, I believe, quite a little while now. How long have you been in the astrology world? Not just studying it, and then let us know how long you've been doing it professionally.
So studying it, I guess, at some point in 2017, but keeping in mind, like I'd gone from complete skeptic to like hardcore, this is real, maybe within a few months of just like having an honest look at what is actually astrology, what isn't just the newspaper horoscopes,
right? Totally.
You know, and that didn't take that long, if I'm honest. Then I started studying it formally with the teacher, and then after the first year of that, I started taking clients by donation, and I built up. So I'd say I kind of called 2020 my first, like January 2020 was like, right, we're all go. We're in this now. Yeah.
Cool. And that was when you first became a professional and you started taking on clients and really wielding the staff and making a living out of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. Oh, looks like our internet.
Doing a little bit of it, but yes, basically. Are we back?
Gotcha. Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay. Sorry. Yes, and that was maybe I'd been taking clients for a while at that point, but then 2020 I started speaking about it on YouTube as well.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Right on. That makes sense. Yeah. So you've been doing it for at least professionally for at least about 2 years now.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So, and you've been studying it for a while. You know, it's funny. I find a lot of astrologers have done the same thing that you and I have, which is I started off getting into it as like a skeptic. I thought that people were just crazy, that they were wasting their time looking at things that are not practical, fact-based evidence as a very scientific-minded person. And so what I decided to do is to find an astrology book and just really dig through it and chew on it and see if, see the baloney that's happening here. I'm Leo rising, and I have the Sun and Mars and Pluto all in Scorpio. So I've got a lot of Scorpio energy. So when I read about Scorpio, because I got that stellium there, I was like, whoops, this is actually more real than I could ever possibly imagine. So it's amazing that you went probably through a similar process. How did you break that skepticism? You just started studying it and just seeing the fact?
Well, it's very similar to what you said, and I already knew my sun sign as Aries, and on some level, I could identify with it. But then other aspects of Aries, like I was like, I'm not athletic. I was like the last picked kid in at sports and all of that. Learning, I think that it was more than just like the keyword tropes associated with your sun sign. Just learning that I had a rising sign, a moon sign, that there were these other planets that signified different things, and that it incorporated these really rich archetypes.
Yep.
And just realizing the extent of that. It was actually, I would say, though I was looking at books like you were, which I think a lot of skeptics don't even get to that point, right? They just hear about the concept of astrology and write it off. But it was listening to the astrology podcast and hearing like Chris, Kelly, Austin, just go into astrology on a really like deep level. And I was like, these people sound A, like nice, B, just really like intelligent, well researched. I had to give it another thought. And the more they talked about, I guess the more
esoteric.
Like even like and like even the predictive stuff and like hearing stories that astrology could describe stuff, events in your life, both past and present, to such accurate degree. It was that. So it's very much understanding that it wasn't just the psychological element of astrology that the traditional or Hellenistic approach, and I think with Vedic as well, you get into much more like undeniable, spooky, predictive stuff, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, and when you really see it fleshed out, you can't really deny what's kind of happening there. Exactly. And so that totally makes sense to me, Kat. You know, it's interesting that I think that there's a big emergence of information about astrology on YouTube these days. It's interesting that you're watching the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan and all those guys, and that's what sort of imploded your own intuition about what you feel and understand about astrology within yourself. These days, that's just a huge burgeoning movement, is the YouTube world. And it's one of the things that I'm very excited about myself. I've been doing lots of videos. You know, there's so many areas and niches that you can carve into. And YouTube is a cult of personality. So all of us infotainers who are giving information in our own entertaining way, everybody can come and learn about this information through whatever teacher, whatever person they vibe with. And I think that that's a special thing these days. So, you know, one of the things I often like to sort of prompt the idea of is that there are different astrologers for different clients for different purposes. For you, Kat, you've shared with me your information just now about your big three, as well as your year of birth. Do you mind me sharing it now?
Sure.
So what you mentioned is that you're a Cancer rising, which is very interesting. You know, that would mean that you've got the sun in the 10th house.
Exactly.
In Aries. That is an incredible signature. Is it close to your MC, the sun, I wonder?
My MC's in Pisces in the 9th.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep, cool. So it's still very close to the MC. In Vedic astrology, we consider something called Digbala, and it's directional strength. Where was the sun in the local space when you were born? To have the sun in the 10th house, it shows that the sun is doing what the sun is supposed to be doing by getting on top of itself, not hanging too low at the bottom where it tries aggressively to work out the foundations of one's psyche. The sun being in the 10th house is trying to act despite whatever the psyche is going through. It's the best, wonderful place for the sun. And you're in Aries, which is where the sun is exalted. Awesome signature.
Very like solar oriented. I mean, the exalted sun. I've got a big like the tarot card of the sun is this big thing that we have on our wall here. So
lovely. Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's classic. So you're a Cancer rising. You have the sun in the 10th house, close to the MC, around the 10th house area. And then you've got Sagittarius moon. And I'm happy to say that it's nice to meet somebody who has this mix of water and fire. I'm Leo rising with Scorpio sun and Sagittarius moon as well. And I always love merging with people who have all that fire energy going on.
It's always fun. There's always good energy for me.
No kidding. Yeah. So for you to be Cancer rising, Capricorn would be on your descendant. So is your moon kind of hanging out around the 6th house kind of thing?
It is, yeah. So not the best place for full moon, but
and that's not too bad. They say that when the sun likes to be on top of the chart and the moon likes to be on the bottom. The moon being closer to the 4th house understands its own nature in an intuitive way. So even though it's in the 6th house, it's dealing with a lot of enemies and constant little business management and things that most people consider to be dry. But you can get a lot done with the moon being there in particular because it's under the horizon. You probably instinctively know what you need to feel good. And you can use that to do lots of management and important little bits of debt reduction and important work at the 6th house sort of body level. Do you find yourself being called ever to work into, to get into holism, Ayurveda, or, things about the body and of health and things like that?
Yeah, I was just saying to my partner last night, just how much health and being interested in that side of life has been, in another life, I'd say that I would have been a health coach or a person, maybe not a personal trainer, but like certainly from, like you said, Ayurveda, I've looked into that several times. I'm getting a little bit into herbalism. Cool. So yeah, that side of the 6th house moon has been a very big, and the
You're
moon
Cancer
being
rising.
Well, exactly. And one thing I would say though, the moon not seeing the rising sign, not seeing Cancer by like whole sign aspect, I think it's taken me a while to get comfortable with the moon and not just like elevate the sun in my life, but also pay attention to my emotional needs and like physical needs, stuff like that. But
totally
yeah, that would kind of sum it up.
Wonderful. That makes sense to me, Kat. So it's interesting to me that like when I think about it, for Cancer rising to have the moon in that 6th house, it's probably a huge part of your consciousness. And something, just while we're just shooting the shit about it, I found I've been really what's happening to me lately, especially, is that in the Vedic consciousness, it's considered that yoga and self-realization from the spine and the cerebrospinal centers of the chakras and the self, whatever that essence means, is kind of primary. They say that self-realization in yoga in particular is primary, and Jyotish, which is astrology, is a limb of yoga. And, it's not, if you're trying to get into astrology for its own sake, in order to maybe gain power or maybe to give your limited sense of ego the transient things that are kind of incidental, the programming from childhood, we get into astrology and we try to fortify these limiting habit patterns before we look into the soul. That's what I find what a lot of astrologers will do. Something I kind of like to talk about. But in any case, something I'm interested in talking about the world in general is that me as an astrologer, I find a lot of times I can be doing a chart for somebody. A lot of the times, part of the battle with astrology is just telling someone that you're not really off path.
Yeah.
A lot of people are actually on the path that they're supposed to be on. They just are like, they're 27, they're going to be hitting their Saturn return soon. And they're like, I don't know. I've been building all these things up and I don't know what's supposed to happen, but I'm vaguely like, I've done school and I've got this happening. I don't know if it's what I want to do. And a lot of the times I just often end up telling people that you are where you need to be. You just need to work out the inflammation in your spine. You've just got to start eating a healthy diet. You've just, a lot of the times people aren't really off path. They just need to develop a sense of holism.
Yeah. And like you said, a kind of a being where we are. And this is something I struggled with, I think, with that sun in the 10th, feeling very like, achievement oriented or like the light at the end of the tunnel, and never just kind of, can I just be in the tunnel right now? And actually astrology has been a huge gift. And I hope it doesn't come across as a disappointment to clients when, you know, we tell them stuff like that, because for me, that was a great relief to know it's not so much about me trying to do or get or achieve something. It's more about like looking at how incredible it is that the sky could possibly reflect what's happening in my life right now, in the past, what will be. Like that's enough for me anyway.
Yeah,
I hope
totally.
it's enough for clients as well.
Yeah. And I've seen so many clients. For some clients it's not, but sometimes that's more about the karma of the client than it is about the astrologer. Many clients, I think, are just on this weird war path where they go from one astrologer and the astrologer says, yeah, this is probably what you should be doing with your life. And they, it can probably be seen somewhere in their chart that they won't accept it. It's usually a Jupiter thing, I find. Jupiter is kind of the pin of philosophical meaning in a person's life. They could have a great sun, Aries sun. They're doing the karma that they're supposed to be doing, but there's some piece of them that doesn't feel like they're on track. And some clients will just spin through 5 or 6 different astrologers, and all of them will tell them different things, but sort of pretty much the same way lines. And the person says, none of these people are telling me what I want to hear. And then astrology can get stepped on and sort of kicked around in this way by people like that who are unsatisfied. But it's not necessarily the psychology and science of astrology that's gone wrong there. It's just that the client can't accept the dharmic path that they're being given.
Yeah. I think this is why it's a shame that a lot of people jump, and including myself, right? So some of the first astrology books I looked at were the kind of cookbook style, Aries and, the sun in Aries, Whereas once I started learning with my teacher, I realized actually understanding why we do astrology, understanding what astrology as a language, that's one of the ways I like to think about it, is doing for us on a spiritual level, is so important, because you can get so much more out of a reading. And actually I find that there might even be the time when somebody might not even want to get an astrology reading at that point. They might want to understand transits and stuff in their life, but they're less interested in, tell me about myself. The questions change, I think, when that happens.
Yeah, interesting. If I might ask, do you happen to have Uranus in Sagittarius?
No, I've got it in Cap, early degrees.
Gotcha. So you've probably got Uranus and Neptune in the early degrees of Capricorn?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yes, I'm in that. There was a point from about like 87 till about like 93 or 94, whatever it was, when those two planets came into conjunction. So they're kind of hanging out in your sort of 7th house area.
How do you interpret that conjunction? I haven't even looked at it.
Well, that's a conjunction that is, it's a generational aspect. But for me, when you look from the perspective of the houses, even generational aspects have huge, profound depths of meaning to the individual soul based on which house it's in. That's something I always like to clarify with people. A lot of the Vedic people aren't into Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
Yeah,
partly there's a reason for that. It's because the chakras are considered to be contained by the originating 7 saptagrahas. In my cohesion of the two systems, I think that's correct. I think that the sun through Saturn does resonate with the chakras, but that the outer planets are this galaxy's particular gates to higher psychic phenomena lodged within the energy body of the chakras. And if my idea is that, if you look on another galaxy, there will always be a sun, moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, because these come from the zodiac. These are resonate. It's a miracle to think that Aries starts the spring equinox, and that there's a planet in our galaxy called Mars, which has an initiating energy. What a miracle. It's amazing that the Western, Aries being East, Libra being West, Libra resonates with the heart and with opening up to relationships. And we have a planet Venus in our solar system, which resonates with the archetype of the heart, of West, of where you're going and bonding with other souls and other things in business and et cetera, all the things Libra means. It's amazing that Venus as a planet exists and reflects that zodiacal archetype. Like I just like to talk about that because it's a miracle, really. But at the same time, consciousness on any planet couldn't exist without beings to cognize it. And it just makes sense that we have the chakra system, we have the bodies that we do, who would cognize things in the way that reflects the zodiac and then reflects the planets that we have. So I think that life in the cosmos just spins for billions and trillions of years until the miracle happens where a planet like ours does happen to have the planets in it that can manifest the human consciousness that we do. Because I think, therefore I am. What else would be there but that miracle? Because there's so much cosmos and so much time, it was bound to happen. My understanding is that the Vedic people are right, that there has to be the 7 saptagrahas from Sun through Saturn. But each galaxy is going to have perhaps a different set of asteroids, a different set of outer planets, and a different set of those other psychic arbiters of karma that are probably different on each planet. I think I incarnated here because I've got Chiron at 9 degrees of Leo in my ascendant. Maybe, there are other galaxies where Chiron isn't even a thing, but there will always be the 7 saptagrahas.
That's a nice way of kind of, I guess, syncing it all up. And I guess it's the archetypes fundamentally. If I was to put a word to it, it's like that they're going to manifest, like you said, in all the different galaxies. And it's a powerful thing to meditate on.
Yeah, totally. And this is just where Vedic consciousness is kind of taken, really a collusion of Vedic and Western. So when it comes to Uranus and Neptune, personally, I kind of do think that they are an important part of the human evolutionary mechanism. The Vedic people are kind of just iffy and so whatty about the outer planets. But I think that they are very important, and they are arbiters of important evolutionary consciousness. Uranus and Neptune, as I understand it in the Vedic sense, relates to Brahma, which is the creator, the grandfather, as we often call it, and Neptune resonates with Vishnu, which is the eternal preserver of the spiritual heart. That's really like the 7th chakra. And so to have Uranus and Neptune conjuncting is a very interesting thing. I think that everybody in our generation who has that conjunction is probably going to be experiencing some kind of difficulty related to Capricorn, which often manifests as, its opposite is Cancer. So Cancer is kind of relating to your tribe and your own sense of self, your own family. Capricorn is like materialism, the material world. And we have to integrate. Everybody's got to integrate that axis. For those with Uranus and Neptune there, Uranus is exploding it with inspirations to basically get away from the family. Neptune is forcing this implosion to be caught in a container of continuing to stay between the tension of getting away from your tribe in order to be a business person in the world and to be a successful person with all the Capricorn things, being an individual, successful business person who's respected in the world of capitalism and North American commerce and even creativity, really all the things related to Capricorn. A lot of us in this generation are trying to get away from our tribe, our family, because we probably psychically feel like Uranus is pulling us to get away from it. Even Uranus is connected to the Cancer archetype too, which is that us launching away from our tribe is going to be that much better when we still have a tribe, we still have a family, we still have a house, we still have all the important Cancer things. Neptune being there in particular is really forcing everyone in this generation of people who have this archetype to hold the space of not eliminating our family ties. There's an important need for our individuality in the world to be fitted to the purpose of our tribe and our family, our genetics, our genealogy. I think that this is a lot of stuff, the kind of thing that a lot of people in our generation are interested in. Even the seven generations of ancestors before us. This is things that we often think about. And I think you in particular are probably going to be playing this out between the axis of your first house and your seventh house. Mm-hmm. So I think probably your lovers that you get involved with are going to be pulling you to get away from familiar generational ancestral patterns inside yourself. And they're going to probably pull your teeth out and make you let go of all that. And through time, you're probably going to come to find that some of those teeth were meant to still be in there. Mm-hmm. Some of those aspects of your ancestry are still important to who you are as a Cancer rising.
I think it's really interesting, as you said, like just generationally, Capricorn issues, things like being a digital nomad, that became very, I guess, popular with my generation, and I'm in that camp, as well as a generation of people, I don't know about in the States, but in the UK, like no one my age, like, some people can, but buying houses, stuff that like previous generations, the Capricorn, like doing the Capricorn thing, and also the Cancer thing of like the traditional family home or something. Mm-hmm. Everything just has to look a little bit more, we're confronted with the Uranus Neptune, I think, energy in that space. I'm not expressing it very well, but,
yeah, no, I'm with you.
I mean, it's a lack of conventionality in that sense.
Kind of getting away from the capitalist regime of being a contributor to an economy that was once workable.
Yeah.
All of our economies used to be able to do that, although there's a lot of excess in our parents' generation. It's just simple things like, you could go and be a waiter at a bar and save up enough money to buy a house because the economy was different at the time. And a lot of things were, a lot of the excess of the older generations were fattened up on the excess of things related to Capricorn. And now people in our generation are kind of left holding the bag, which is very much empty. And we're kind of being forced to, in some ways, it's a funny tie-in, because even myself, I want to be a part of the power structure while dissolving it from within. I know so many people in our generation who are anarchistic-minded people, like anarchy, who just want to burn it all so that we're all on the same level playing field, so that we're all subsisting on the same base plate of what can I do with my human energy. Although what's funny is that I've got Saturn coming out my ears. I got Saturn in Aquarius, and it's, according to Vedic astrology, it's one of my most present planets. It's got the most shadbala, as we say. So I'm one of the people in this generation that has the dissolving influence happening in Capricorn, but the Aquarian Saturn in me, where Saturn is kind of in its own home, according to the ancient idea that Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius, Uranus being secondary ruler of Aquarius, but Saturn being primary. I'm all about the fact that Saturn's still important. We need infrastructure in whatever world that we're going to try to build, but we got to make the space for how bad the excesses of the previous generation's understanding of this infrastructure is going to go. So I'm interested in the idea of the digital nomad that you said, like somebody who's, could you explain that a little bit if you don't mind?
Yeah, I guess, for example, being a YouTuber and I don't know, like working online, before the pandemic and all of that, a lot of, myself included, a lot of people of my generation, I'd say, embraced the, I work from home. I'm kind of making a living somehow by working multiple jobs. And the nomadic part is, well, I can do that anywhere because the internet is like everywhere. So,
right.
Rent an Airbnb, stay with somebody and live a life like that. Not in a kind of gap year, trip abroad kind of sense, but in a lifestyle sense.
Interesting.
I did that in 2019. I tried it out, just got my Sag moon needs filled by being
nice
nomad for a while. But.
So you were traveling at the time, and or were you at a place and you were doing things through the internet all over the world while staying in one place?
Yeah. I was moving while working while moving around and traveling.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Nomadic. That definitely makes sense to me, because it's just what people have to do these days. I think it's very interesting too that I think that you're born in a year where this whole consciousness that we're talking about is coming through in a, let's say, a very societally confrontational way. The reason I'm saying this is because, as you've shared with me, I believe you said you were born in 1988. 1988 is the year of the dragon. Sabaza and East Asian astrology, most people call it Chinese astrology. I've been trying to call it East Asian because that's more accurate. The East Asian Taoist animal astrology is its own whole world. And I often like to just mention it in my videos to get people thinking about it. For you to be born in the year of the dragon, usually the dragon is what's called one of the cardinal points. It's considered to be an earth sign, and it's one of the great arbiters and changers in society, because they really wield a lot of willful force in whatever direction that they're going. They often make pioneers. It's a whole year, and not everybody born in the year of the dragon is going to be doing this kind of thing. For you to have this Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn karma happening through a cardinal point close to the 7th house, and for you to be in the year of the dragon, I really see like an incredibly fiery executive energy that kind of has to take a few bites out of the social structure that you're working within in order to develop yourself and to be who you are. People say that the dragon is very mighty and it does a lot of this biting, but just like the Shiva of Vedic astrology, if the destructive force is applied with earnestness and a truth in the spiritual heart, it could do a lot of work to dissolve and breathe fire on infrastructures and materialistic conditions that are not conducive to the spiritual heart and to the things that Uranus and Neptune are trying to express through Capricorn. Do you find that, the way I'm putting this, do you find, would you resonate with what I'm talking about with the dragon?
Yes. Yeah. I do. But it could also be, equally my Aries sun kind of reflecting a lot of this.
Yeah, that's amazing. You've got a wonderful, huge, crazy energy there.
Well, I've always liked, I remember hearing Year of the Dragon. I was like, yeah, that's clearly the best one.
Nice, sick. Dragon's dope.
I get the imaginary, no, dragon's real. Yeah, that makes sense. I would really like to learn more about that. It really interests me. So
yeah, there's a lot there. Dragon is considered to be a wood animal, and it's in the water triad. The water means something different in Chinese astrology than it does in Western astrology and in horoscopic astrology. It really relates more to energies inside the body. Water relates to the kidneys, and the water of the dragon interacts with the earth of the dragon, which is the stomach. Earth blocks water, but the dragon is a water creature. So that's why what often happens is that the water inside the dragon has a lot of force that obliterates the earth, which is kind of all around the dragon. Dragon gets into infrastructures, into like they're an executive in a corporation who is making big movements just for the people on top to see that the dragon is willing to direct and to execute plans and activities in order to be recognized as being the wielder of a sword in whatever field they're in.
Well, it's interesting because do you see people born in years of the dragon struggle maybe with being just like your regular employee?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I mean, again, this is like a 10th house sun and Aries. I went freelance very early in my career.
Yeah.
Like struggle with kind of falling in line, being a cog without having that opportunity to, like you said, kind of make changes on a larger scale.
And to really lead in some ways.
Basically.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, that makes sense. And they often end up being freelance entrepreneurs of sorts, just because, for better or worse, the dragon is very willful. And I'm a musician, and I've been in a few bands, and I know the power and the necessity of someone who is willing to take charge. Everyone's got to deal with that energy, especially if it's too much, but everybody can integrate it. Everybody can integrate, leaders are important, and all leaders can still become humble people who are just matter of fact about how their bodily energy, which is really a bit more of the Chinese East Asian thing. The body energy is just used to being in a position of not being subservient to anybody for the dragon. And that's just as useful as everybody else in the zodiac, like the dog. The dog is the opposite of the dragon, and the dog is used to being the underdog, underneath everything, not putting its head too up high as a leader. And dragon and dog are both important. They're the opposites, like tend to not like each other in Chinese astrology, but they're both important. The dog being this underdog, everyone exalts the dog because he's standing underneath and keeping his head low. And so everyone exalts the dog because he's a union guy. The dragon is more like an individual entrepreneur who is in the free market and launching something that no one has thought of. It's a pioneering move that is forcing everybody else to catch the trend that the dragon is throwing out there. So this is, I like to always blend these interpretations if I can. A dragon Aries is definitely a very powerful combination, especially because the sun can wield the will that the dragon is supposed to be kind of rocking and rolling with.
I'll be careful with where I wield it.
Wonderful. That's the best thing you can say, because some of the greatest leaders are people who lead but are still earnest and humble for the sake of whatever they're moving through. Just don't be afraid to launch out into something as an individual that's powerful. I think somebody like you could certainly wield that.
Appreciate it.
Of course. So Kat, I'm loving just hanging out and talking like this. How are you, by the way? Are you feeling okay?
Good. I'm holding it together. Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. So, something I wanted to ask you about, I'm intrigued that when I saw you in your channel, you mentioned a phrase that I have heard, and I've seen it through the annals of history, especially. You talk a lot about what you call the daimon. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly in the way that you would think about it. I believe that you spell it Daimon. Now, as I understand it, historically, people have had this idea of a demon, which is something in the Christian mind that is an evil part of yourself, which God is supposed to smite. And, the classic dualism of Christian monotheism. But before the Christians took out the A and the I and they put an E and, turned it into that demon, the daemon was something that the Greeks were big on. Even Plato talked about this daemon as the idea of a sort of important aspect of the soul. I would love to hear how you would convey that. Do you consider it something that has positive essence, but can be a little bit unruly. What's your take on it?
Well, there's a lot to say. But, I mean, I say daimon. That's the
Daimon.
way I spell it is the Greek version of the word, the anglicized Greek version. Daimon is still right. That's just the Romanized version.
Gotcha.
So,
thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
It's a really interesting one because it shows up in so many cultures across such vast periods of time. You can't really trace it back to any one thing, but this idea that we have like guiding spirits or one personal guiding force, certainly with the Socrates' daimon, which Plato wrote about, is like the famous one that a lot of people know about. And
right.
I'll share a little story that really captivated my mind on that in a sec. But
cool.
I think you put it nicely. I do see it as a generally good, benevolent force that can be benevolent, because our idea of good isn't always, it doesn't always feel good to us.
Right.
So
right.
Doing what the daimon wants of us, or another word for daimon is actually destiny. It could be, and I've seen it been translated directly as the word destiny. So doing what our destiny wants of us isn't always fun. It isn't always easy. It's not always like getting to the top and having ice cream and cake.
Yeah.
The story that I wanted to share is, it comes in the end of Plato's Republic. It's called The Myth of and it's a story about a man, a soldier who's slain on a battlefield, has a kind of post-death experience and comes back to tell the tale.
Cool.
And what he sees is the souls, like all of the souls in the afterlife, in a kind of line, waiting to get assigned their particular lives that they are going to go down to Earth to live. So we actually get to pick a life according to this myth, kind of like a script that we follow. And not only that, but we also get to pick an accompanying personal daimon, which the job of whom is to remind us of the script, the life that we are meant to follow.
The destiny.
So that's where you get the destiny come in. Sorry, dharma. Yes, exactly.
Right. I figured that might be a connection there.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, we forget what that dharma, that life path is. But the daimon is here to remind us of that. So, the way it shows up, I mean, and the word daimon, so they're not all personal daimons. You can get generic daimons, which are much like spirits, and some certainly would be considered, just malevolent, kind of trickster-like characters. And
very interesting to me, because I can think that there must be times when material reality and the biological needs of the human DNA code sometimes will act on an instinct that does not ultimately serve the greater meaning and purpose of the incarnation and really what the person could be doing with their lives. And if there is something inside of us that is going to get us in tune with that, I can imagine it's going to feel bad. It's going to feel painful when something inside of us has to yank us back into a more concise destiny path. And I imagine that this must be why it's often perceived as malevolent in this way.
Yeah, it's like one way I've thought about it, and it's kind of a theory of mine, is that even certain illnesses could be thought of as caused by the daimon. And again, this is how far do you want to let your imagination go with this? And maybe it's not imagination, maybe how to conceptualize this is interesting. But the book The Soul's Code by James Hillman is a really good one for kind of fleshing this out and seeing how the daimon shows itself in different people's lives. But yeah, I think the daimon can definitely, as James Hillman says, can make a body ill if it's not being it's not being tended to.
That's very interesting.
So yeah, naturally I got very interested in this, and it really nicely ties in with astrology. I think the daimon would want us to know about astrology, because that is a way for us to understand our life path.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like, the daimon, it's probably some aspect of the jivatma, something inside of us that is simply really ourselves feeling when the red check engine light is blinking on the vehicle. We can roll our eyes at it and say, oh, darn, it sucks that this vehicle is telling me that this engine light is happening. But really, it's a benevolent thing that's happening because we're not doing something that our vehicle wants us to do. So I imagine that we probably couldn't pin this daimon to any particular astrological figure. It's probably more intrinsic to the whole holotropic system of our psychic resonance with our own astrology chart. So that, like if we are experiencing Saturn return and there's aspects of our lives that we haven't yet integrated, the diamond shows up and forces us to reckon with what we have not been building on. In the same way, when we see a transit to Venus in Pisces, when it's coming up to Neptune, like it kind of recently is right now, and we see that there's opportunities to enact a bliss that we've kind of almost forgotten about, we could still call that the diamond. Am I on the right track there, that it's not a specific figure?
Yes and no. Like, so you can see it from different levels, I guess. I think on the largest level, yes, it's bigger than the chart. It's our destiny is bigger than the chart in a way.
Nice. Yeah, I agree.
The Neoplatonists, so Porphyry, Iamblichus, these are people who played with that question. And Iamblichus, for example, would say that no, the daimon can't be defined by one planet in the chart. It's bigger than the chart. Porphyry,
they talk about astrology in this way. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And these are, and we can read about the conversations that these people had in history. Porphyry, however, was determined to find an astrological analog of the daimon, and partly because there was this idea that if you like prayed to that planet and did the right planetary rituals, that would in some ways please your daimon. So again, these are all like different traditions, but
got it.
There was like quite elaborate techniques to figuring out a planet that was most aligned with your daimon's nature. Wow. And this kind of comes from the idea that the daimon itself, just like our soul, is descending through the planetary spheres and kind of picking up different passions from each of the planets until we like land here on Earth and have our birth chart. So's the daimon is too. And the daimon kind of on the kind of celestial sphere level belonged to the sphere of Earth, the sphere below the moon, the sublunary sphere. So it just depends on who you speak to, and some say yes, some say no. I like to talk to clients about the potential for finding a planet that could speak to their daimon in their chart, and that is so that it's kind of like, to me, I see it as a starting point for developing a relationship with the personal daimon. Right. The planet will never literally be the daimon. Right. The planets are the stars of the gods. Whereas your daimon is your personal daimon. It's very unique to you. Yeah. But having a planet in the same way that when we talk about, like I'm a kind of Marsy, solar, lunary person, let's say, the daimon has planetary essences as well. So that's kind of where I've landed on it. But very good. Interesting.
I really see that this is some kind of there's a part of all of us that is psychically has an undertow of attunement to our astrological energies and to all the energies inside of our bodies. And everybody is in a different type of relationship with it. The yoga people are really kind of big on, I would read this through different traditions in an interesting way. I would almost think that a realized yoga person is trying to sit in the lap of, Kundalini and the serpentine energy, getting on top of the lower consciousness or the subliminal subconscious conditioned mind in order to get into a sphere where they are wielding their astrology energy in a way that best fits the divine intelligence within them. And I imagine that divine intelligence, it has to sit in the lap of that daimon. at the same time, I almost feel like maybe you could even, in the same way that you have to get in tune with your diamond, maybe it's like the subconscious mind in a way, where we have to get in tune with our subconscious mind, but our subconscious mind also has to get in tune with what we are implying through our divine intelligence. So the yoga people, I think, might convey that it's a bit of a yin and a yang, but while we have to get in tune with what the diamond is trying to show us, through the application of will, we can probably also get this subliminal diamond energy to come into cohesion with the will that we are trying to apply, with the Crowleyan true will that we come to understand. Yeah. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it in my brain, at least this is me talking with you about it from what I would say is a Vedic perspective.
Yeah, really nicely put. I think it's really in alignment with the theurgists, as well as, like you said, you brought in Crowley there, and I think his idea of the holy guardian angel is
right. Nailed it. You're into Crowley.
Yeah.
Well, dude. Yeah. Cool. I like Crowley's stuff. He's certainly a brilliant, intelligent guy. He's Leo rising with Uranus in Leo, and he's got Pluto in Taurus in the 10th house.
He's the world's best personal marketer. He did some amazing work,
definitely
branding work.
Yeah, although he's still as human as anybody else. He's a character. But that's very, very cool, Kat. So while we're here and while we're running through this idea, you and I are both still young astrologers. We're still young in our game. And so, I'm kind of inviting you to just sort of have fun with this at a theosophical exercise, because I'm sure this is something that you're learning to integrate. Do you actively engage with the concept of the diamond when you are doing astrology charts with a client?
Yes. So with my own diamond?
That's an interesting question.
No, well, because I do diamond readings for people.
Right. That's more of what I was getting at.
Yeah, for sure. So that's something that I've developed using 4 different techniques based on, I haven't made them up. These are techniques that come from ancient Hellenistic astrology. I kind of, through my research, read a book by Dorian Greenbaum called The Daimon in Hellenistic Astrology. And that kind of started me off in my own path of how would someone approach the daimon through astrology. And so these 4 techniques are the ones that I'm playing with right now. And again, they're subject to change, but
gotcha. That's what you're moving through. I wonder, do the 4 techniques relate to cardinal points, or are they just arbitrarily? There's 4.
I would say they're different approaches. So you could say in Hellenistic astrology, 2 of the houses, the 11th and the 12th, were called the houses of good daimon and the house of bad daimon. And what I've seen through looking at different charts is that they relate more to daimon-like experiences in people's lives, some that manifest as very positive, supportive ones, and some that manifest as what feel more difficult, though they are still very much experiences that have been crucial on our path, our destiny.
That's very illuminating. Feel free to go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And then the final technique is the one that I mentioned that Porphyry identified, which is identifying a single planet that can speak to the personal daimon. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and different techniques will resonate with different people more. And one is zodiacal releasing, which it's not a secret that in many ways, just depending on the lens you look at it, to me is like the calendar of the daimon. This is when daimon stuff is more active, and that's not like something that I've made up. It's like that's what that's doing.
What the Greeks and Hellenistic philosophers were talking about.
Yeah, that you release one of the ways of so, and maybe you practice what's that other thing, the dasha system, Vimshotri
dashas. Yep.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
zodiacal releasing is a lot like that, but you're releasing from lots. So the lot of spirit or the lot of daimon, like that's a thing in traditional astrology in the West. And so releasing from that point in the chart is like saying, this is the the casting of your life from this point. So I'm not explaining it. It's a hard one to explain. And these are certain time periods which you would want to highlight, which can reflect, peak moments in your life.
That makes sense to me, Kat. That totally resonates with the dashas.
Yeah.
We talk about it generally. There's a guy named Vic Dakara in the Vedic community on YouTube. He does a lot of kind of stuff on this, and he speaks of the dashas as like an internal clock. When we see what's happening, the diamond's clock, wonderful. And what we see on the surface of transits and these sort of things just happen to be the incidental hands on the dial, and we see all these things happening on the surface that we're always going to have to go through. But there's an internal spinning mechanism that has to also move through internal spiritual engagements with the diamond. If I'm reading it correctly. Yeah. Very interesting. So I've got these 3 points. You've got was the 11th and the 12th kind of like 2 of the 4, or was that 1 of the 4?
That was 1 of the techniques.
Okay. Yeah. And then we've got the single planet, which I guess Porphyry was kind of dealing with.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then there's zodiacal releasing, which resonates with like a Hellenistic dasha period.
Yeah.
Very interesting to me. So was there a 4th element that you were mentioning?
And the 4th one was looking at the lot of Daimon in our lives and looking at transits to that. Sorry, I'm like beginning the coughing fit now.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, we are. No problem, Kat. We are definitely.
Sorry about that. We just got to the good stuff. And
story of my life. That's always how it goes. But we're at an hour, so this has really already been an amazing look into Daimon astrology. As a Vedic person, I always love hearing anybody giving me a resonance for what Hellenistic astrology is all about. So I really appreciate that too. One thing I would like to, if you don't, maybe I'll just have a quick little turn for myself. And then maybe we'll start to wrap it up for today, Kat. What do you think about that? Does that sound good?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So the one thing I wanted to mention is that I think it's interesting when you were talking about the 11th and the 12th house as relates to the diamond and it being benefic and malefic, or there being that possibility. It's interesting to me because the 11th house in Vedic cosmology relates to the gains that we want to ultimately get out of this life. It's the Aquarian 11th house. So it's an air house. It's Kama. Relates to desire and attainment of things that we want. But the 11th house, ironically, is considered to be the most evil house, the most inauspicious house in Vedic astrology. The reason is because it's this funny two-way thing. When you have a planet in the 11th, it means that you are going to push to be well-renowned for doing something in the world. That means that there is a deep desire to be renowned for doing something in the world. And it's one of the houses of ego. But ego is a 4-letter word in Vedic cosmology because they're very just matter of fact about the fact that those are legitimate desires of the soul that you do want to get. But if you don't meditate, if you don't get a hold of the compulsions of your mind, the needs to try and attain what our 11th house has can be malefic. It can be ultimately you're living your life and you've got a leaky bucket just because you're desiring things that have nothing to do with the life that you're living. That's why they say the 11th house can be malefic, but still important. The 12th house is kind of the opposite, where there are things we don't want to deal with, but we kind of have to and are forced to. And if we reckon with the 12th house, it's difficult on its face, but it's ultimately benefic. So it's interesting to me, these
that's really interesting, and it feels very, from what I know about Vedic like teachings generally, that would make a lot of sense. And the daimon is, I think, very much related to like desires on this plane, and that is that's a really interesting layer that I'd really like to investigate more and like potentially add into that as a kind of buyer beware. Like the 11th house sounds so great, but like you said, is
nice.
It's really interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dustin.
Of course, Kat. Now, as we've been talking, we've got it's nice to see that we've got my friend Seth Rowe back here is talking a little bit to us and just rapping about the Chinese zodiac. Seth says that we're both finding correspondences with Vedic, Chinese, and Plato, and our dynamics are cool: watery male and feminine fire. Love it. Thanks, Seth. That's cool to hear. So, for everybody watching, I'm going to try to do as many of these live streams as I can. I'm going to start trying to organize them so that everybody can see them ahead of time. Kat, my friend, you've done such a good job of hanging out with me and holding down the consciousness for this Hellenistic astrology, the Daimon astrology, as you've talked about it, and just your general energy. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Dustin. It's been really fun. I've learned a lot, so I didn't expect that on an interview, but this is
awesome.
Oh,
You've
got to come on my show as well, and I'll turn the tables.
Sure, I would love that. I would love you to school me, and I'd love for you to give me that dragon energy, because I love it, Kat. I love that you and I both have watery and fiery energy, and I think it works well. I think we're both passionate people, and we both just launch with our individual thing. But since we both do that, I don't feel like we're stepping on our toes or anything like that. I think it was very constructive. So for everybody watching, this has been Kat Rose. Now, Kat, if anybody was wanting to go and see and talk to you about this Daimon astrology, about Hellenistic, or any of these things that you've been talking about, would they look you up on your website? I believe you have a website. And
yes.
Do you mind sharing? If you want to share your plugs, you can feel free now.
Thank you. It shouldn't take long. It's HowtorockAstrology.com. So cat with a C. And I've got a 50% off all my birth chart readings, Daimon readings right now through the month of April, because it's my birthday month. It's a thing I do every year.
Nice.
So people can check that out there,
right?
As well.
Yeah, you're an Aries. Yeah, I should have thought about that. Wonderful, Kat. So that's an awesome deal. And if anybody wants to check out Kat's stuff, you can check out catroseastrology.com, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to contact Kat for any reason, I suppose your contact info will be on there too.
It is, yes.
Sweet. Kat, you're a dear. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And thank you to everybody else who's been hanging out with us as well. This has been a great show today, and stay tuned, because I'm going to try to get more of these live streams going, because they keep going so darn well. Thanks again for spending your time with us, Kat, and for everybody watching. We'll see you guys again soon.